Don't force a relationship that isn't meant to be. Fated unions are preordained, so there's no need to worry. Even when waves rise up to the sky, there will always be a boat that crosses steadily through the rapids. During the Gend reign, in the main street of Kunshan County, Suzhou Prefecture, there lived a man named Song Dun. He was originally from an official family. His wife was Lady Lu. The two of them didn't engage in business but relied on the ancestral fields, collecting rent to make a living. They were over 40 years old but had not had a single child. One day, Song Dun said to his wife, as the old saying goes, raise sons to care for you in old age, store grain to prepare for famine. We're both over 40 and still have no offspring. Time flies like an arrow, and in the blink of an eye, our hair will turn white. For the affairs of our later years, whom can we rely on? After saying this, he couldn't help but shed tears. Lady Lu said, the Song family has been kind and virtuous for generations and has never done evil deeds. Moreover, you're the only descendant in your generation. Surely, heaven won't cut off the Song family line. Whether we have children or not, it's a matter of time. If it's not meant to be, even if we raise a child to adulthood, they might leave us halfway, leaving us with all our efforts in vain and adding more sorrow. Song Dun nodded in agreement. Before he had finished wiping away his tears, he heard someone coughing in the reception room, calling out, "Is Yufeng at home?" In the Suzhou custom, whether rich or poor, everyone had a nickname by which they addressed each other. Yufeng was Song Dun's nickname. Song Dun listened carefully, and when he heard the second call, he recognized the voice. It was Lu Shunquan. Lu Shunquan's given name was Yuki. His family had been operating a large boat for generations, carrying passengers and goods and delivering them to various provinces. He earned a considerable amount of money from the freight charges. His entire prosperous family business revolved around the boat. Even the boat itself was worth several hundred taels of silver, made entirely of fragrant camphor wood. In the water, rich areas of Jiangnan, many people were engaged in this line of business. Lu Yuki was Song Dun's closest friend. When he heard his voice, he quickly rushed out to the reception room. They didn't need to bow deeply, they just clasped their hands in greeting, sat down separately, and had tea, which goes without saying. Song Dun said, "Shunquan, how do you have time today?" Lu Yuki said, "I've come specifically to borrow something from you, Yufeng." Song Dun smiled and said, "What could your boat possibly lack that you'd come to borrow from my humble home?" Lu Yuki said, "It's not other things. This thing is something your family surely has in surplus, so I dare to ask." Song Dun said, "If it's really something my family has, I definitely won't be stingy." Lu Yuki, unhurried, mentioned this thing. It was. Behind it is not an imperial edict held aloft. In front it is not a book hidden against the chest. Made of fine yellow cloth with tight stitches. It is reverently offered with clean hands. It has held sacrificial money for fulfilling vows, and accompanied the dignified images during prayers. It has been to many famous mountains and ancient temples, traced with the lingering scent of incense. It turned out that because Song Dun and his wife had difficulty having children, they had burned incense and prayed for an heir at various places. They had made yellow cloth wrappers and bags to hold offerings like paper money for the gods. After burning incense, they hung these in the family's Buddhist hall, showing great sincerity. Lu Yuki was 5 years older than Song Dun, 46 years old, and his wife, Madame Su, also had no children. He had heard that a salt merchant from Huizhou, who was praying for an heir, had newly built the temple of the goddess of Chenzhou outside Chengmen in Suzhou. The temple was very popular, with continuous prayers and offerings. Lu Yuki happened to have a convenient trip. He was going to sail to Fengqiao to pick up passengers and wanted to burn incense at the temple. However, he hadn't made the cloth wrappers and bags yet, so he specifically came to borrow from the Song family. When he explained the reason, Song Dun fell into deep thought and remained silent. Lu Yuki said, "Yufeng, do you perhaps not want to lend them? If they get damaged, I'll pay you back 2 for 1. Song Dun said, "How could you think that? But there's one thing. Since the goddess in the temple is so efficacious, I also want to go on your boat. I just don't know when we'll leave." Lu Yuki said, "Right away." Song Dun said, my wife has another set of cloth wrappers and bags. There are 2 sets in total, and we can share them. Lu Yukai said, that's great. Song Dun went inside and told his wife about his plan to go to the county town to burn incense. Lady Lu was also happy. Song Dun took down the 2 sets of cloth wrappers and bags from the wall in the Buddhist hall, kept one set for himself, and lent the other to Lu Yukai. Lu Yukai said, I'll go and wait on the boat first. You come quickly, Yufeng. The boat is under the Daban Bridge at the north gate. If you don't mind, you can have some ready-made vegetarian food on the boat, so you don't need to bring rice. Song Dun agreed. Immediately, he hurriedly prepared some incense, candles, paper offerings, and bolts of silk, packed them into a bundle, put on a newly made white lake silk Taoist robe, and rushed out of the north gate to board the boat. With the favorable wind, in less than half a day, they easily covered the 70-li journey. The boat docked at Fengqiao, and that night, nothing eventful happened. There is a poem to prove this. The moon sets, crows caw, and frost fills the sky. Facing the riverside maples and fishing boats, sorrow fills my eyes. Outside Gusu City stands the cold mountain temple. At midnight, the temple bell reaches the passenger boats. The next day, they got up very early. After washing and rinsing on the boat, they ate some vegetarian food, cleaned their mouths and hands. They carried the yellow cloth wrappers filled with sacrificial money and inserted the paper offerings and prayer tablets into the yellow bags, hanging them around their necks. Then they walked to the temple of the goddess of Chenzhou. It was just dawning. Although the temple gate was open, the hall door was still closed. The 2 of them walked around the corridors, looking at the temple. It was indeed well built. Just as they were admiring it, with a creak, the hall door opened, and a temple caretaker came out to welcome them into the hall. At that time, no other pilgrims had arrived, and the candle holders were still empty. The temple caretaker put down the glazed lamps, fetched fire to light the candles, and took their prayer tablets to recite their prayers. After the 2 of them burned incense and bowed in worship, they each gave the temple caretaker several dozen copper coins as a reward, burned the paper offerings, and then left the temple. Lu Yukai wanted to invite Song Dun back to the boat, but Song Dun refused. Then Lu Yukai returned the cloth wrappers and bags to Song Dun, and they thanked each other and parted. Lu Yukai went to Fengqiao to pick up passengers. Seeing that it was still early, Song Dun wanted to go to Lumen to catch a boat home. Just as he was about to leave, he heard moaning sounds coming from under the wall. When he went closer to take a look, he saw a low thatched shed next to the temple wall. Inside, there was a sick old monk, on the verge of death, who didn't respond when called or asked. Song Dun couldn't bear to see this and stood there looking at him. A man nearby came over and said, "Sir, why are you just standing there looking at him? If you want, do a good deed and help him." Song Dun said, "How can I do a good deed?" The man said, "This monk is from Shaanxi. He's 78 years old. He says he's never eaten meat in his life and reads the Diamond Sutra every day. 3 years ago, he came here to raise funds to build a temple, but he didn't find any donors. So he built this thatched shed and has been constantly chanting scriptures. There's a vegetarian restaurant nearby. He only has 1 meal in the morning and doesn't eat afternoon. Some people feel sorry for him and give him money and rice, but he uses it to pay for his meals at the restaurant and doesn't keep a single coin. Recently, he got this illness and hasn't eaten for half a month. 2 days ago, he could still speak. We asked him, why endure such suffering? Why not leave this world? He said, my time hasn't come yet. I still need to wait 2 more days. This morning, he can't even speak anymore. He'll probably die soon. If you feel sorry for him, buy a simple coffin, cremate him, and that would be a good deed." He said, "The time hasn't come, maybe the one who can help him is you, sir." Song Dun thought, I came here today to pray for an heir. If I do a good deed before going back, the gods will surely know. So he asked, is there a coffin shop around here? The man said, go out of the alley, and the Chen family's shop is there. Chen Sanlang runs it. Song Dun said, please accompany me to take a look. The man led the way to the Chen family's shop. Chen Sanlang was in the shop, instructing the carpenters to saw the wood. The man said, "Sanlang, I've brought you a customer." Sanlang said, "Sir, if you want to see coffin planks, I have top quality ones from Zixi with extra fine materials and double-jointed planks inside. If you want a ready-made coffin, you can choose from what we have in the shop." Song Dun said, "I want a ready-made one." Chen Sanlang pointed to one and said, "This is the best quality, and the full price is 3 taels of silver." Before Song Dun could bargain, the man said, "This gentleman is buying it as a good deed for the old monk in the thatched shed. You'll also get half the merit, so don't ask for an inflated price." Chen Sanlang said, "Since it's for a good deed, I won't ask for too much. I'll sell it for 1 tael and 6 chien, which is the cost price. I really can't go any lower." Song Dun said, "That price is fair." He remembered that he had a piece of silver in the corner of his sleeve, which was about 5 or 6 chien heavy, left over from the money he brought for burning incense, and less than 100 copper coins. Even if he put them all together, it was still less than half the price. "I have an idea. Lu Shunquan's boat isn't far from Fengqiao." So he said to Chen Sanlang, "I agree to the price, but I need to go to a friend's place to get the money. I'll be back soon." Chen Sanlang didn't mind and said, "Take your time." The other man, however, said unhappily, "Sir, since you've decided to do a good deed, why are you trying to get away? You don't have the money on you, so what's the point of looking?" Before he finished speaking, people on the street walked by in a flurry, and many were saying that the poor old monk, whose chanting could still be heard half a month ago, had passed away that morning. Truly, as long as one has a breath left, one can do many things. Once death comes, all affairs come to an end. The man said, "Sir, didn't you hear? The old monk has died. He's waiting for you in the underworld to give him a proper burial." Although Song Dun didn't say anything, he thought to himself, "Since I've set my mind on this coffin, if I go to Fengqiao and Lu Shunquan isn't on the boat, I can't just wait there for him to come back. Besides, as the saying goes, once the price is set, the buyer doesn't matter. If another customer comes along and offers a higher price and buys this coffin, I'll have broken my promise to the monk. Well, forget it." So he took out the piece of silver. It was just one piece. He asked for a scale to weigh it and exclaimed in surprise. It turned out to be a silver ingot. It looked small, but when weighed, it was actually more than 7 chien. He first asked Chen Sanlang to take it. Then he took off the newly made white lake silk Taoist robe he was wearing and said, "This robe is worth more than 1 tael of silver. If you think it's not enough, you can keep it as collateral until I redeem it. If it's acceptable, please accept it as part of the payment." Chen Sanlang said, "I'll take the liberty then. Don't mind." He took the silver and the robe. Song Dun also pulled out a silver hairpin from his head, which weighed about 2 chien, and gave it to the man, saying, "Please exchange this hairpin for some copper coins for the funeral expenses." At that time, the onlookers in the shop all said, "It's rare to have such a kind-hearted gentleman who takes on the major expense. For the other small expenses, we locals should also contribute some money to help." Then everyone went to collect money. Song Dun went back to the thatched shed and looked at the old monk. He had indeed passed away. Song Dun couldn't help but shed tears. He felt as sad as if the old monk were a relative, and he didn't know why he felt so deeply. He couldn't bear to look any more and left with tears in his eyes. When he reached Lumen, the ferry boat had already left, so he hired a small boat and went home that day. When his wife saw him come back at night, not wearing his Taoist robe and with a sad expression on his face, she thought he had had an argument with someone and hurriedly asked him what had happened. Song Dun shook his head and said, "It's a long story." He went straight to the Buddhist hall, hung up the 2 sets of cloth wrappers and bags, kowtowed in front of the Buddha, then went into the room, sat down, asked for some tea, and then began to tell her in detail what had happened to the old monk. His wife said, "That's exactly what you should have done. There's nothing strange about it." Seeing his wife's understanding, Song Dun turned his sorrow into joy. That night, the couple slept until the 5th watch. Song Dun dreamed that the old monk came to his door to thank him, saying, "You were originally destined to have no children, and your lifespan was also supposed to end here. But because of your kind heart, the heavenly emperor has extended your life by 6 years. The old monk and you have a special connection, and I wish to be reborn as your son to repay your kindness in providing me with a coffin." Lady Lu also dreamed that a golden-bodied arhat walked into the room. She cried out in her dream, which woke up her husband as well. They each told the other about their dreams, feeling both skeptical and amazed, and couldn't stop sighing. Truly, as you sow, so shall you reap. Encourage people to do good deeds, for they will bear the fruits of their own actions. From then on, Lady Lu became pregnant. 10 months later, she gave birth to a son. Because of the dream of the golden-bodied arhat, the child's childhood name was Jin Lang, and his official name was Song Jin. The couple was overjoyed, needless to say. At this time, Lu Yuki also had a daughter, whose childhood name was Yichun. As the two children grew up, some people suggested that the two families arrange a marriage. Lu Yuki was quite willing in his heart. However, Song Dun disliked the fact that Lu Yuki was from a boatman's family and not from a prestigious and long-established clan. Although he didn't say anything, he didn't agree in his heart. When Song Jin was only 6 years old, Song Dun fell ill and passed away. As the old saying goes, all the affairs of a family thrive only when the master is alive. 10 women are no match for one man. After Song Dun's death, Lady Lu took charge of the family. They were hit by successive famines, and the villagers, taking advantage of the fact that she was a widow with a young child, imposed various corvée duties on her. Unable to cope, Lady Lu gradually sold off the fields and houses and rented a place to live. At first, it seemed like they were just pretending to be poor, but later, as they sat and ate without any income, within less than 10 years, they became truly poor. Eventually, Lady Lu also fell ill and died. After everything was settled, Song Jin was left with nothing but his bare hands. He was driven out of the house by the landlord and had nowhere to go. Fortunately, since childhood, he had learned a skill: he could write and do calculations. By chance, a scholar named Fan in the local area was selected as the magistrate of Zhongshan County, Kuzhu Prefecture, Zhejiang Province. He was just looking for someone who could write and calculate. Someone recommended Song Jin, and Magistrate Fan had him brought over. Seeing that he was young and good-looking, Magistrate Fan was very pleased. He asked about Song Jin's abilities and found that indeed, Song Jin was proficient in regular and cursive script and calligraphy, and was good at division and other arithmetic operations. On that day, he was kept in the study, given a new set of clothes to change into, and ate at the same table with Magistrate Fan. He was treated very well. A lucky day was chosen, and Magistrate Fan and Song Jin boarded the official boat and went together to the place of his appointment. It was truly. The painted drums beat loudly to urge the oars. The gentle breeze sways the brocade sails. Although Song Jin was poor and of low status, he was after all from a former official family. Now that he was serving as Magistrate Fan's private tutor, how could he be mean and humble, blending in with the servants and being teased and insulted by them? Those stewards bullied him because of his youth and were even more annoyed by his behavior. They set off from Kunshan by water, and when they reached Hangzhou, they had to continue their journey on land. The servants persuaded their master, saying, "Song Jin is just a young lad. He is here to write and calculate and serve you, master. He should be more careful and modest. He has no sense of propriety at all. You have treated him too favorably, sitting and eating with him. It was still okay on the boat, but when we stop for a rest on land, you should maintain your dignity, master. We have discussed it and think it would be better to ask him to write a contract of indenture. Only then will it be proper. When we get to the yamen, he won't dare to act recklessly." Magistrate Fan, who was easily influenced, followed the servant's advice. He called Song Jin to the cabin and asked him to write the contract of indenture. How could Song Jin agree to write it? After being forced for a long time, Magistrate Fan got angry, ordered his clothes to be stripped off, and drove him out of the boat. The servants dragged him around and stripped him clean, leaving him only with a single cloth shirt, and then drove him onto the shore. Song Jin was so angry that he couldn't speak for a long time. Just then, sedan chairs and horses were waiting for Magistrate Fan to continue his journey on land. With tears in his eyes, Song Jin had to avoid them. He had no money or belongings with him. Unable to bear the hunger, he had no choice but to follow the example of two ancient men. Wu Zixu played the flute in the city of Suzhou. Han Xian relied on the charity of an old woman for food. During the day, he begged for food in the streets, and at night, he took shelter in ancient temples. Also, because Songjin was from a former official family, no matter how down and out he was, he still had some pride. He refused to be like the street beggars, groveling and shameless. If he begged and got food, he would eat it, if not, he would endure the hunger. He had irregular meals. After a while, he gradually became sallow and emaciated, losing all his former grace. It was truly. The beautiful flowers lose their red color after the rain. The green grass withers completely after the frost. It was late autumn, and the golden wind brought coldness. Suddenly, a heavy rain fell. Songjin had little food and thin clothes. He endured hunger and cold in the temple of Lord Guan at Beijing Pass and couldn't go out. The rain started at the Chen hour, around 7 to 9 a.m., and didn't stop until the Wu hour, around 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Songjin tightened his belt and then walked out of the temple gate. Before he had taken a few steps, he met someone head-on. Songjin opened his eyes and saw that it was Liu Yukai, his father Song Dun's closest friend, whose courtesy name was Shun Quan. Songjin felt too ashamed to face his father's friend and didn't dare to recognize him. He just lowered his eyes and head and walked away. But Liu Yukai had already seen him. He grabbed Songjin from behind and shouted, "Aren't you young Master Song? Why are you in such a state?" Songjin's tears flowed freely. He clasped his hands and said, "Nephew's clothes are in a mess, so I dare not greet you properly." "Thank you, uncle, for asking." He then told Liu Yukai in detail about Magistrate Fan's rudeness. Liu Yukai said, "Everyone has a heart of compassion. If you are willing to help on my boat, I will ensure that you have enough to eat and wear." Songjin then knelt down and said, "If uncle can take me in, you will be like my reborn parents." At that moment, Liu Yukai led Songjin to the riverside. Liu Yukai boarded the boat first and told his wife about what had happened. His wife, Madame Liu, said, "This is beneficial for both sides. What's not good about it?" Liu Yukai then called young Master Song to board the boat on the bow, took off his old cloth Taoist robe and gave it to Songjin to wear. He led him to the stern, where Songjin met Madame Su, his mother, and his daughter, Yushun, who were also there, and they greeted each other. Songjin walked out to the bow. Liu Yukai said, "Give some food to young Master Song." Madame Liu said, "There is food, but it's cold." Yushun said, "There is hot tea in the pot." Yushun then scooped a pot of boiling hot tea with a clay pot. Madame Liu took some pickled vegetables from the kitchen cabinet and gave them together with the cold rice to Songjin, saying, "Young Master Song, things on the boat are different from at home. Just make do with it." Songjin took them. Seeing that the drizzle was falling again, Liu Yukai told his daughter, "There is an old felt hat at the stern. Take it down and give it to young Master Song to wear." When Yushun took out the old felt hat, she saw that one side of it had already come apart. Yushun was quick-handed. She pulled out a needle and thread from the sewing box and sewed up the torn part, then threw it on the boat canopy and shouted, "Take the felt hat and wear it." Songjin put on the torn felt hat and ate the cold rice soaked in tea. Liu Yukai asked him to clean up the utensils on the boat and sweep the boat, and then he went ashore to pick up passengers and didn't return until evening. Nothing eventful happened that night. The next day, when Liu Yukai got up and saw Songjin sitting idly on the bow of the boat, he thought to himself, "He's new here. We can't get him used to being idle." So he scolded loudly, "You're eating my food and wearing my clothes. When you're free, twist some ropes and make some cords. They'll come in handy. How can you just sit there doing nothing?" Songjin quickly replied, "I'll do whatever you ask me to. I dare not disobey." Liu Yukai then took a bundle of hemp and gave it to Songjin, asking him to make cords. It was truly under someone else's roof, how can you not bow your head? From then on, Songjin was careful and hard-working day and night, never being lazy. Moreover, he was proficient in writing and calculating. Whenever there were goods on the boat, he kept the accounts, and there was not the slightest error in the records of income and expenditure. On other boats, when there were transactions, Many people also asked him to use the abacus and keep the account books. All the customers respected and liked him, and they all praised him, saying what a smart young man young Master Song was. Liu Yukai and his wife, seeing that he was careful and useful, treated him differently, taking good care of him with good food and clothes. In front of the customers, they introduced him as their nephew. Songjin also felt that he had found a good place, was at ease and comfortable, and his appearance became plumper day by day. All the boatmen envied him. Time passed quickly, and more than 2 years passed before they knew it. One day, Liu Yukai thought to himself, I'm getting older. I only have one daughter. I want to find a good son-in-law to rely on for the rest of my life. Someone like young Master Song would be perfect. But I don't know what my wife thinks. That night, when he was half drunk with his wife and his daughter Yichun was beside them, Liu Yukai pointed to his daughter and said to his wife, Yichun is growing up, and she still doesn't have someone to rely on for life. What should we do? Madame Liu said, this is a major matter for us to rely on in our old age. Why haven't you taken it seriously? Liu Yukai said, I've been thinking about it often, but it's hard to find someone who is really satisfactory. Someone with the ability and talent like young Master Song on my boat is a 1 in 8,000 find, and it's really hard to come by. Madame Liu said, why don't you just promise Yichun to young Master Song? Liu Yukai pretended, what are you talking about, my dear? He has no home and no one to rely on. He depends on my boat for a living. He has no money at all. How can we promise our daughter to him? Madame Liu said, young Master Song is the descendant of an official family. Moreover, he is the son of an old friend. When his father was alive, there were people who discussed marriage for him. How could you forget? Although he is down and out now, look at his appearance. He can write and calculate. If we take such a son-in-law, it won't disgrace our family. We two old people can also have someone to rely on in our old age. Liu Yukai said, my dear, have you made up your mind? Madame Liu said, what's there to hesitate about? I've made up my mind. Liu Yukai said, that's great. It turned out that Liu Yukai had always been afraid of his wife. He had long fancied Songjin as a son-in-law, but he was worried that his wife wouldn't agree. Now that he saw his wife's willingness, he was very happy. He immediately called Songjin and in front of his wife, promised him this marriage. At first, Songjin was also modest and thought he didn't deserve it. But seeing the kind intentions of Liu Yukai and his wife, and that they didn't ask him to spend any money, he had no choice but to agree. Liu Yukai went to the fortune teller to choose an auspicious day according to the traditional customs, and then informed his wife. He sailed the boat back to Kunshan. First, he held a coming-of-age ceremony for young Master Song, made a set of silk clothes for him to wear. Songjin was dressed in new clothes, a new hat, new shoes, and new socks, and he looked even more handsome. Although he doesn't have the talent of Cao Zijian, he is more handsome than Panin. Madame Liu also prepared some clothes and ornaments for her daughter. When the auspicious day arrived, they invited relatives from both sides, held a grand wedding banquet, and took Songjin as their son-in-law on the boat. The next day, the relatives came to offer their congratulations, and they had a 3-day wedding feast. After Songjin got married, the love between him and his wife needless to say was deep. From then on, the business on the boat became more and more prosperous day by day. Time passed quickly, and more than a year and 2 months passed without them noticing. Yichun's pregnancy term was over, and she gave birth to a daughter. The couple cherished the child like gold and took turns holding her. Just after the child's first birthday, she got smallpox. Despite medical treatment, it was ineffective, and she died 12 days later. Songjin grieved deeply for his beloved daughter and cried too much. Affected by excessive emotions, he contracted a chronic illness. He felt cold in the morning and hot in the evening, and his appetite gradually decreased. His bones became more prominent and his flesh wasted away. He walked slowly. At first, Liu Yukai and his wife still hoped that he would recover from his illness, and they invited doctors and diviners for him. But more than a year passed, and his condition worsened rather than improved. He was more like a ghost than a man, unable to write or calculate. He became a burden to them, and they couldn't wait for him to die, but he just wouldn't die. The two old people regretted it deeply and started to complain to each other, saying, "At first, we hoped to have a son-in-law to rely on in our old age. But now, look at this situation. He's neither dead nor alive. He's like a rotten snake coiled around us, and we can't get rid of him. He's ruined our daughter's life. What should we do? For now, we need to come up with a plan to get rid of this troublemaker and let our daughter find another good husband so that we can be satisfied." The two of them discussed for a long time and came up with a plan, even keeping it from their daughter. They just said that there were goods in Jianbei and they needed to move the boat there to load them. When they reached the Wuxi area of Shizhu, they came to a desolate place. There were only lonely mountains, surging water, wild banks, and desolate cliffs, with no one in sight. On that day, there was a slight headwind. Mr. Liu deliberately steered the boat wrongly, and the boat ran aground on the sandy shore. Then he asked Songjin to get into the water and push the boat. Songjin was slow in his movements, and Mr. Liu scolded him, saying, "You sickly wretch. If you don't have the strength to move the boat, go and cut some firewood on the shore to burn. That way, we can save some money on buying firewood." Feeling ashamed, Songjin took a machete and struggled to go ashore to cut firewood. While Songjin was away, Mr. Liu pushed the rudder hard, turned the boat around, raised the sails fully, and sailed downstream. They didn't worry about the hardships their flesh and blood would face, but were glad to be rid of the troublemaker. Let's talk about Songjin. After going ashore to gather firewood, he walked deep into the dense forest. Although there were many trees, he had no strength to cut them down. He could only pick up some broken branches, cut some withered thorns, and pull out dry vines, bundling them into 2 large bundles. However, he didn't have the strength to carry them. An idea came to him. He took another dry vine, threaded the 2 bundles of firewood together, leaving a long end of the vine exposed. Then he held the vine in his hand and walked, just like a shepherd leading an ox. After walking for a while, he suddenly remembered that he had left his machete on the ground. So he turned back, picked up the machete, inserted it into the firewood bundle, and slowly dragged the bundle down to the shore. When he reached the place where the boat had been moored, the boat was nowhere to be seen. All he could see were the misty river, sandy islets stretching as far as the eye could see. Songjin walked along the river, looking around as he went, but there was no trace of the boat. As the red sun gradually set in the west, he realized that he had been abandoned by his father-in-law. There was no way to ascend to the heavens or descend into the earth. He felt an intense pain in his heart and burst into tears. He cried so hard that his throat became blocked and he fainted on the ground. It was a long time before he came to his senses. Suddenly, he saw an old monk on the shore. He didn't know where the monk had come from. The monk planted his staff on the ground and asked, "Where are your companions, layman? This is not a place to stay." Songjin quickly got up and saluted, stating his name. "I was deceived by my father-in-law, Mr. Liu. Now I'm all alone and have nowhere to go. I beg you, master, to help me and save my humble life." The old monk said, "My thatched hut is not far away. Come and stay there for the night, and we'll figure out what to do tomorrow." Songjin was extremely grateful and followed the old monk. After walking about a mile, they indeed saw a thatched hut. The old monk struck a stone to make fire and cooked some porridge for Songjin to eat. Only then did he ask, "What feud do you have with your father-in-law? I'd like to hear the details." Songjin told him in detail about how he had become the son-in-law on the boat and how he had fallen ill. The old monk asked, "Do you hold a grudge against your father-in-law, old layman?" Songjin replied, "When I was begging for food, he took me in and arranged my marriage. Now that he abandoned me when I was seriously ill, it's because of my own meager fortune. How dare I hold a grudge against others?" The old monk said, "From what you've said, you're truly an honest and kind person. Your illness was caused by excessive emotions and can't be cured by medicine alone. Only by keeping a calm mind and taking good care of yourself can you recover. Have you ever followed the Buddhist teachings and chanted scriptures on a regular basis?" Songjin said, "No, I haven't." The old monk took out a scroll from his sleeve and gave it to him, saying, "This is the Diamond Sutra, the essence of Buddhist teachings. I will teach you now, layman. If you chant it once a day, it can calm all your distracting thoughts, cure your illness, prolong your life, and bring you endless benefits. Songjin was actually the reincarnation of the old monk in front of the temple of the goddess of Chenjo. In his previous life, he had specialized in chanting this scripture. Now, with the old monk's oral instruction, he could recite it fluently after just one time, which showed that the karma from his previous life continued. Songjin sat in meditation with the old monk, closed his eyes, and chanted the scripture. As dawn was approaching, he unconsciously fell asleep. When he woke up, he found himself sitting on a grassy slope. The old monk and the thatched hut were nowhere to be seen, but the Diamond Sutra was still in his arms, and he could still recite it when he opened it. Songjin was very surprised. He rinsed his mouth with water from a pond and chanted the scripture once. He felt all his worries disappear, and his sick body suddenly became strong and vigorous. He then realized that the holy monk had appeared to save him, which was also due to his previous karma. Songjin kowtowed to the sky, grateful for the protection of the dragons and the heavens. However, he was like a duckweed in the vast ocean, with no place to settle. He walked aimlessly and soon felt hungry. He saw that there seemed to be houses hidden among the trees in the mountain ahead. He couldn't help but recall his previous experience and went forward to beg for food. Because of this, it was destined that young Master Song would turn misfortune into good luck and that happiness would come after suffering. Just as the saying goes, when the road seems to end, a new path will open, when the water seems to run out, a new source will emerge. When Songjin reached the front mountain and took a look, there was no sign of human habitation. Instead, he saw spears, swords, and halberds planted everywhere among the trees. Songjin was hesitant but gathered his courage and went forward. He saw a dilapidated earth god temple. Inside the temple, there were 8 large boxes, which were tightly locked and covered with pine grass. Songjin thought to himself, these must have been hidden by great bandits. Arranging the weapons is just a trick to deceive people. Although the origin of these boxes is unclear, there's no harm in taking them. He came up with a plan. He broke off a pine branch and stuck it in the ground to mark the path, then walked out of the forest step by step until he reached the riverbank. It was also a time of good fortune for Songjin. Just then, there happened to be a large boat whose rudder had been damaged by the strong headwind and was docked on the shore for repair. Pretending to be panicked, Songjin said to the people on the boat, "I'm Qianjin from Shaanxi. I was traveling with my uncle to do business in Heguang. When we passed here, we were robbed by bandits. My uncle was killed. I pretended to be a young servant who had been sick for a long time and begged for mercy, so they allowed me to stay alive for the moment. The bandits sent one of their men to stay with me in the Earth God Temple to guard the goods, and he has gone to other places. Fortunately, that accomplice was bitten to death by a poisonous snake last night, and I managed to escape. Please be kind enough to give me a ride." The boatmen didn't quite believe him when they heard this. Songjin added, "There are 8 huge boxes in the temple, all of which are my family's property. The temple is not far from here. I'd like to ask several of you to go ashore with me and carry the boxes to the boat. I'm willing to give you 1 box as a reward. We must go quickly. In case the bandits come back, not only will we be unable to do anything, but we'll also be in danger." The people on the boat were all seeking wealth from afar. When they heard about the 8 boxes of goods, they were all eager to go. At that time, 16 young men gathered, prepared 8 sets of ropes, poles, and clubs, and followed Songjin to the Earth God Temple. Sure enough, they saw 8 huge and heavy boxes. 2 men carried 1 box, and it worked out perfectly with 8 loads. Songjin collected the weapons in the forest and hid them in the thick grass. All 8 boxes were loaded onto the boat, and the rudder was repaired. The boatman asked Songjin, "Where are you going, sir?" Songjin replied, "I'm going to Nanjing to visit my relatives." The boatman said, "Our boat is heading to Guazhou, and it's very convenient for you as it's on the way." Then the boat set sail. After traveling about 50 miles, they stopped to rest. The people, flattering the wealthy Shaanxi merchant, pooled their money to buy wine and meat to comfort and congratulate him. The next day, a strong westerly wind blew. With the sails up, they reached Guazhou in a few days and docked there. Guazhou was only about 10 miles across the river from Nanjing. Songjin hired another ferry boat, carried 7 of the heaviest boxes off the boat, and gave 1 box to the boatman as promised. The boatman opened the box and divided the contents among themselves, which need not be elaborated further. After crossing the river to Longjong Pass, Songjin found an inn to stay in. He called a blacksmith to make keys, opened the boxes, and saw that they were filled with gold, jade, and other precious treasures. It turned out that this group of bandits had been accumulating these treasures for many years, not obtained from just one family or at one time. Songjin first sold the contents of 1 box in the market and got several thousand taels of silver. Afraid of arousing the innkeeper's suspicion, he moved to a residence in the city, bought servants to serve him, dressed in fine silk, and ate rich food. From the remaining 6 boxes, he only kept the most valuable items and sold the rest, getting no less than tens of thousands of taels of silver. He bought a large mansion inside Yifengmen in Nanjing, renovated the halls, gardens, and pavilions, and purchased all kinds of daily necessities, making the place extremely magnificent and tidy. He opened a pawn shop in front of his house, bought several estates, had dozens of servant families, 10 outstanding stewards, and also kept 4 beautiful boys to attend to him. Throughout the city, people called him Lord Qian. He rode in a carriage when going out and was surrounded by wealth at home. As the old saying goes, one's living environment can change one's spirit, and good nourishment can change one's physique. Now that Songjin had become wealthy, his skin was smooth and his complexion was radiant, completely different from his previous emaciated and shabby appearance. Truly, when a person's luck arrives, their spirits soar. When the moon reaches autumn, its radiance is renewed. Now, let's turn to another part of the story. On that day, Liu Yukai tricked his son-in-law onto the shore, turned the boat around, and sailed downstream with the wind. In the blink of an eye, they had traveled 100 miles. The old couple secretly rejoiced. Their daughter Yichun, however, still didn't know what had happened. She thought her husband was still on the boat. She boiled some medicine and called him to take it, but there was no response. She thought he was sleeping on the bow and went to wake him up. But her mother snatched the medicine bowl from her hand and threw it into the river, scolding, "Where is that sick wretch? You still think about him?" Yichun asked, "Where is he really?" Her mother said, "Your father saw that his illness was getting worse and was afraid he would infect others. So he tricked him into going ashore to gather firewood and then sailed away on his own." Yichun grabbed her mother and cried out, "Give me back my husband's song." When Mr. Liu heard the crying in the stern, he came to persuade her. "My dear daughter, listen to me. For a woman, marrying the wrong person means a lifetime of suffering. That man with the skin disease will die sooner or later. It was never meant to be between you two. It's better to end it now and not waste your youth. Your father will find you a good husband to settle down with. Forget about him." Yichun said, "What you've done, father, is heartless and unjust, going against the principles of heaven. This marriage with Songjin was originally decided by both of you. Since we became husband and wife, we should live and die together. How can you go back on your word? Even if he is dying of his illness, we should let him die with dignity. How could you have the heart to abandon him in a desolate place? If Songjin dies because of me, I won't live either. If you pity me, father, turn the boat around and go upstream to find Songjin. Otherwise, we'll be criticized by others." Mr. Liu said, "That man with the skin disease, seeing the boat gone, must have gone to other villages to beg for food. What's the use of looking for him? Besides, we're sailing downstream with the wind, and we're already 100 miles away. It's better to stay put. I advise you to give up." Seeing that her father refused, Yichun burst into tears, walked to the side of the boat, and tried to jump into the water. Fortunately, her mother was quick and grabbed her. Yichun vowed to die and kept crying mournfully. The 2 old people didn't expect their daughter to be so stubborn. There was nothing they could do but watch over her all night. The next morning, they had no choice but to give in and sail upstream. The wind and the current were both against them. After a whole day of sailing, they had only covered less than half of the distance. That night, Yichun cried restlessly again. At around 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. on the 3rd day, they finally reached the place where the boat had been run aground before. Yichun went ashore herself to look for her husband. She saw 2 bundles of firewood and a machete on the beach. She recognized the machete as the one from the boat. Obviously, these bundles of firewood had been brought by Song Jin. With the things there but the person gone, she felt even more pain. She refused to give up and insisted on looking further. Her father had no choice but to follow her. After walking for a long time, all they saw were dark mountains and dense forests with no signs of people. Mr. Liu tried to persuade her to go back to the boat, and she cried all night again. Early on the 4th day, she asked her father to go ashore with her to search again. But it was all open countryside, and there was no sign of Song Jin. She had to return to the boat crying. She thought, in such a desolate place, where could my husband find food? Besides, being seriously ill, he couldn't walk far. He left the machete on the beach. He must have drowned himself. After crying for a while, she tried to jump into the river again, but her father stopped her. Yichun said, "You gave me life, but you can't control my heart. I'm going to die anyway. It's better to let me die now so that I can meet Song Jin." Seeing their daughter in such great pain, the 2 elderly people felt extremely remorseful and said, "My dear daughter, it's your parents' fault. We didn't think carefully for a moment and did this thing. The mistake has been made, and it's no use regretting it now. Have pity on us, old people. You are our only child. If you die, our lives will also be in danger. We hope you will forgive your parents' faults, live with an easy heart, and let your father write a notice and paste it in various places in the towns along the river. If Song Lang is still alive and sees the notice, you will surely meet again. If there is no news after 3 months, you can do good deeds to pay homage to your husband as you wish. Your father will not be stingy with the money for you." Only then did Yichun stop crying and thanked them, saying, "If that's the case, I can die without regret." Mr. Liu immediately wrote a notice looking for his son-in-law and pasted it on prominent walls in the towns along the river. After 3 months, there was no news at all. Yichun said, "My husband has indeed died." She immediately prepared mourning clothes and headwear, dressed in deep mourning, set up a memorial tablet to offer sacrifices, invited 9 monks, and held a religious service for 3 days and nights. She donated her own jewelry to pray for her deceased husband's blessings. Mr. and Mrs. Liu loved their daughter so much that they didn't dare to oppose her in any way. The commotion lasted for several days before it subsided. Yichun still cried every morning at the 5th watch and every evening at dusk. When the people on neighboring boats heard this, they all sighed with emotion. There were some familiar guests who, upon hearing about this, all felt sorry for young Master Song and pitied Miss Liu. Yichun cried for a full 6 months before she finally stopped. Mr. Liu said to his wife, "Our daughter hasn't cried these past few days, and her heart is gradually cooling down. It's a good time to persuade her to remarry. After all, we 2 old people can't rely on our widowed daughter. What would we do in case of an emergency?" Mrs. Liu said, "You're right, but I'm afraid our daughter won't agree. We have to approach her slowly." More than a month later, on the 24th day of the 12th lunar month, Mr. Liu returned to Kunshan on the boat to celebrate the new year. After getting drunk at a relative's house, he took the opportunity to persuade his daughter while still tipsy, "The spring festival is approaching. It's time to stop mourning." Yichun said, "Mourning for my husband is a lifelong duty. How can I stop it?" Mr. Liu stared at her and said, "What lifelong mourning? I decide whether you can wear mourning or not. If I say no, you can't wear it." Sensing her husband's harsh words, Mrs. Liu intervened, saying, "Let our daughter finish the remaining days of the year in mourning. On New Year's Eve, we can make a bowl of porridge and rice to pay respects to the spirit, and then stop the mourning." Seeing that her parents didn't understand her feelings, Yichun started crying again, saying, "You 2 plotted against my husband, and now you won't even let me wear mourning. You just want me to remarry someone else. How could I lose my virtue and betray Song Lang? I'd rather die in mourning than live without it." Mr. Liu was about to lose his temper again, but his wife scolded him a few words and pushed him into the cabin to sleep. Yichun cried all night again as before. On New Year's Eve, the 30th day of the 12th lunar month, Yichun offered sacrifices to her husband and cried for a while. Her mother managed to stop her, and the three of them had dinner together. Seeing that their daughter refused to eat meat or drink alcohol, her parents were worried and said, "My dear daughter, since you insist on mourning, having a little bit of meat won't hurt. Young people shouldn't weaken their vitality." Yichun said, "I'm just lingering on. Even this bowl of vegetarian food is more than I deserve. Why would I eat meat?" Mrs. Lu said, "If you don't want meat, having a cup of vegetarian wine can also help relieve your depression." Yichun replied, "Not a single drop of wine can reach my husband in the underworld. Thinking of him, how can I bear to swallow it?" After saying that, she cried mournfully again, and without even eating the vegetarian food, she went to sleep. Mr. and Mrs. Lu expected that their daughter's will was unshakable, and from then on, they didn't force her anymore. Later generations have a poem to praise Yichun's integrity. The virtue and chastity of women in boudoirs have been passed down through the ages. Among boat women, who can compare with her when looking through the annals? She vows to die without changing her unyielding will. And she is truly worthy of the sages of the past, like the heroine in The Cypress Boat. Now, let's turn to another part of the story. Song Jin lived in Nanjing for 1 year and 8 months and had built up a prosperous family business. He then asked the housekeeper to take care of the household and, taking 3,000 taels of silver with him, led 4 servants and 2 beautiful boys, hired a passenger boat, and went to Kunshan to visit Mr. and Mrs. Lu. The neighbors said, they went to Yichun 3 days ago. Song Jin used the silver to buy cloth, then went to Yichun, stayed at a well-known host's place, and finished loading the goods. The next day, he went to the river mouth and found the Lu family's boat. From a distance, he saw his wife at the stern of the boat dressed in plain mourning clothes. He knew that she had remained chaste and unmarried, and he was deeply moved. He returned to his lodgings and said to the host, "Mr. Wang, there is a woman on a boat by the river, wearing mourning clothes and very beautiful. I've found out that it's the boat of Lu Shunquan from Kunshan, and this woman is his daughter. I've been a widower for almost 2 years and want to ask for this woman to be my second wife." Then he took out 10 taels of silver from his sleeve and gave it to Mr. Wang, saying, "This small gift is for the wine. I trouble you, sir, to act as the matchmaker. When the matter is settled, I will thank you more handsomely. As for the betrothal gifts, I won't be stingy even if it's 1,000 taels of silver." Mr. Wang was delighted to receive the silver and directly went to the boat to invite Mr. Lu to a tavern. He prepared a sumptuous feast and invited Mr. Lu to sit in the honored seat. Mr. Lu was greatly surprised and said, "I'm just a boatman. Why do you treat me so generously? There must be a reason." Mr. Wang said, "Please have 3 cups of wine first, and then I dare to speak." Mr. Lu became even more suspicious and said, "If you don't explain, I won't dare to sit." Mr. Wang said, "There is a Lord Qian from Shaanxi in my shop, who has a fortune of 10,000 strings of cash. He has been a widower for nearly 2 years and admires the beauty of your beloved daughter. He wants to ask for her hand as his second wife and is willing to offer a betrothal gift of 1,000 taels of silver. He especially asked me to act as the matchmaker. I hope you won't refuse." Mr. Lu said, "It would be the greatest wish for my daughter on the boat to marry into a wealthy family. But my daughter is very firm in her chastity. When it comes to remarrying, she threatens to commit suicide. I can't accept this request, and I also dare not accept your kind offer." He was about to get up. Mr. Wang grabbed him with one hand and said, "This feast is also the intention of Lord Qian, who asked me to be the host. Since it has already been prepared, it would be a waste not to enjoy it. Even if the matter doesn't work out, it's no harm." Mr. Lu had no choice but to sit down. During the drinking, Mr. Wang also said, "Lord Qian's request is out of sincere intention. I hope you will go back to the boat and consider it carefully." Mr. Lu had been frightened several times by his daughter's attempts to jump into the water, so he just shook his head and didn't agree at all. After the meal, they parted ways. Mr. Wang went home and told Lord Qian what Mr. Lu had said. Song Jin then knew how firm his wife's will to remain chaste was. He said to Mr. Wang, "It doesn't matter if the marriage doesn't work out. I want to hire his boat to transport goods to the upper reaches of the river. Surely he won't refuse that either." Mr. Wang said, "Boats in the world carry passengers from all over the world. Needless to say, he will surely agree." Mr. Wang immediately told Mr. Lu about hiring the boat, and Mr. Lu indeed agreed. Song Jin then instructed the servants to send the bedding and luggage to the boat first, and the goods could be sent to the boat the next day, as it was not too late. Song Jin was dressed in fine brocade clothes and a mink hat, and the two beautiful boys were each wearing green velvet robes, holding incense burners and ruyi scepters and following him. Mr. and Mrs. Lu regarded him as Lord Qian from Shaanxi and didn't recognize him. After all, the relationship between husband and wife is different from that with others. Yichun peeked from the stern of the boat. Although she didn't dare to believe that he was her husband, she was secretly surprised and thought, he looks 7 or 8 out of 10 like him. As soon as Lord Qian got on the boat, he said to the stern, "I'm hungry and want some food. If it's cold, please soak it with some hot tea." Yichun already had her doubts. Then Lord Qian scolded the servants, saying, "You boys eat my food and wear my clothes. When you're free, twist some ropes and make some cords. They'll come in handy. Don't just sit there doing nothing." These words were exactly what Mr. Lu had said to Song Jin when he first got on the boat. When Yichun heard this, she became even more suspicious. After a while, Mr. Lu personally brought tea to Lord Qian. Lord Qian said, "There is a broken felt hat on your boat's stern. Lend it to me." Mr. Lu was simple-minded and didn't understand the situation at all. He directly asked his daughter for the broken felt hat. Yichun took the felt hat and gave it to her father, and softly recited 4 lines of a poem. "Although the felt hat is broken, I sewed it with my own hands. Thinking of the one who wears the hat. His appearance is no longer the same as before." Lord Qian heard the poem recited from the stern and understood it silently. He took the hat in his hand and also recited 4 lines of a poem. "I have transformed from a mortal to an immortal. And my hometown people don't recognize me. Although I'm wearing fine clothes now, I still can't forget the old felt hat." That night, Yichun said to her parents, "The Lord Qian in the cabin, I suspect he is Song Lang. Otherwise, how could he know there is a broken felt hat on our boat? Moreover, his face looks similar, and his words are suspicious. We should inquire carefully." Mr. Lu laughed loudly and said, "Silly girl. That sickly wretch from the Song family has probably been reduced to nothing by now. Even if he didn't die back then, he would just be begging for food in a foreign land. How could he become so wealthy?" Mrs. Lu said, "You used to blame your parents for persuading you to stop mourning and remarry, and you threatened to jump into the water and die at every turn. Now that you see a wealthy guest, you want to recognize him as your husband. What if you recognize him, but he doesn't recognize you? Wouldn't that be embarrassing?" Yichun blushed with shame and dared not say another word. Mr. Lu then pulled his wife aside and said, "My dear, don't say that. Matters of marriage are perhaps determined by fate. The other day, shopkeeper Wang invited me to a tavern for a drink and said that Lord Qian from Shaanxi was willing to offer a large betrothal gift of 1,000 taels of silver to ask for our daughter as his second wife. Because of our daughter's stubbornness, I didn't give an answer. Now that our daughter has changed her mind on her own, why not take this opportunity and promise her to Lord Qian? Then we can enjoy the rest of our lives." Mrs. Lu said, "You're right, dear. Lord Qian came to hire our boat. Maybe he has intentions. You can try to find out tomorrow." Mr. Lu replied, "I have my own plan." The next morning, after Lord Qian got up, washed, and dressed, he held the broken felt hat and kept looking at it on the bow of the boat. Mr. Lu started the conversation and asked, "Lord Qian, what are you looking at the broken felt hat for?" The Lord replied, "I like the sewn parts. The stitches must have been done by a skillful hand." Mr. Lu said, "My daughter sewed it. What's so special about it? The other day, shopkeeper Wang conveyed a message from you. I wonder if it's true." Lord Qian deliberately asked, "What message was that?" Mr. Lu said, "He said that your wife has been dead for 2 years and you haven't remarried yet, and you want to marry my daughter." The Lord asked, "Do you agree or not, sir?" Mr. Lu said, "I couldn't wish for anything better. But my daughter is very firm in her chastity and has sworn never to remarry, so I dare not promise easily." The Lord asked, "How did your son-in-law die?" Mr. Lu said, "My poor son-in-law unfortunately contracted a chronic illness. That year, When he went ashore to gather firewood and didn't return, I didn't know and accidentally sailed away. Later, I posted notices to look for him for 3 months, but there was no news. I'm afraid he drowned himself in the river. The Lord said, your son-in-law didn't die. He met an extraordinary person, recovered from his illness, and instead made a great fortune. If you want to see your son-in-law, call your daughter out. At this moment, Yichun had been listening intently. As soon as she heard these words, she burst into tears and shouted, heartless Qian Lang. I've worn deep mourning for you for 3 years and endured countless hardships. Why don't you tell the truth now? What are you waiting for? Songjin also shed tears and said, my wife, come and meet me. The couple hugged each other and wept bitterly. Mr. Lu said, my dear, it's clear that he's not really Lord Qian. We should go and apologize. Mr. and Mrs. Lu entered the cabin and kept bowing in apology. Songjin said, father-in-law and mother-in-law, there's no need for such courtesy. Just make sure that when I'm sick in the future, you don't deceive me again. The 2 elderly people blushed with shame. Yichun immediately took off her mourning clothes and threw the memorial tablet into the water. Songjin then called the servants to kowtow to their mistress. Mr. and Mrs. Lu killed a chicken, prepared wine, and entertained their son-in-law. It was both a welcome feast and a celebration. After everyone was seated, Mr. Lu mentioned how his daughter had refused to eat meat or drink alcohol all this time. Songjin shed sad tears, personally filled a cup for his wife, and persuaded her to start eating meat again. Then he said to his in-laws, according to your original plan to deceive me and try to kill me, our kindness and righteousness should have been broken, and we shouldn't recognize each other anymore. But I'm reluctantly drinking this cup of wine today, all for the sake of your daughter. Yichun said, if it hadn't been for that deception, how could you have become prosperous? Besides, Mom and Dad were kind to you before. From now on, just remember the kindness, not the grudges. Songjin said, I will follow my dear wife's orders. I've already settled down in Nanjing, and I have plenty of land and wealth. You too can give up your boat, rowing business and come with me to enjoy a comfortable life there. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Mr. and Mrs. Lu thanked him repeatedly. That night, nothing eventful happened. The next day, when shopkeeper Wang heard about this, he came to the boat to offer his congratulations, and they drank and feasted for another day. Songjin left 3 servants at shopkeeper Wang's place to distribute the cloth and collect the accounts, while he sailed the boat to his large mansion in Nanjing first. After staying there for 3 days, he went back to Kunshan, his hometown, with his wife to sweep the tombs and pay respects to their deceased relatives. His clan and relatives all gave generous gifts. By then, Magistrate Fan had been dismissed from office and was at home. When he heard that young Master Song had become prosperous and returned to his hometown, he was afraid of embarrassment if they met on the street, so he hid in the countryside and didn't dare to enter the city for over a month. After Songjin finished his business in his hometown, he returned to Nanjing. The whole family was happy and enjoyed their wealth and comfort, which need not be further elaborated. Yichun saw that Songjin went to the Buddhist hall every morning to worship Buddha and chant scriptures and asked him the reason. Songjin told her about how the old monk had given him the Diamond Sutra and how it had cured his illness and prolonged his life. Yichun also developed faith, asked her husband to teach her, and the couple chanted the scriptures together until they grew old. Later, they both lived to be over 90 years old and died peacefully in their sleep. Their descendants became a wealthy and prominent family in Nanjing, and some of them even passed the imperial examinations. Later generations commented, old Mr. Lu didn't see his kindness through to the end, while young Master Song turned misfortune into good luck. The Diamond Sutra eliminated disasters, and the broken felt hat reunited the family.